Start with Ron.
Thank you very much, Aaron, and afternoon, everybody. As Aaron has said, this is a very brief presentation, the purpose of which is to just raise some points regarding ocean governance to stimulate the discussion that we're going to try to have about how our systems governance folks can get involved in what's going on at the level of ocean governance. Clearly, the engagement can take place at a number of levels. We're all familiar with these various scale levels that could be possible entry points. I'm going to start at the global level with the United Nations system, and we've heard lots of talk about fragmentation or perhaps multiplicity, where we have within the UN and other global level organizations a diversity of organizations that are playing roles. And in the case of oceans, we have about 17 or 18 different organizations that have something to do with ocean governance, which can be a strength, as previous discussions have said, or can present challenges. And there are challenges with this, and there have been cases, one can point to situations of inefficiency, competition, and so forth. And the UN has recognized that, and they've formed what they call UN Oceans, which is a committee of representatives from all of the major bodies. The way that it functions is that the chairmanship of it rotates. There's no dedicated secretariat. There's no resources for it. So one can consider the extent to which this is an effective and an efficient way of bringing together the various UN agencies. So there's, I think, scope there for, as an entry point for governance people to begin to look at that kind of an issue, and the issues surrounding this way of dealing with the multiplicity of agencies at the UN. I'm going to move on very quickly down the level to the regional scale. The scale of processes and oceans require governance arrangements at fairly large regional scales that make up sort of the building blocks of global ocean governance. And the question then is, how are we doing with those? We have, just to give you an idea here, a diversity of arrangements for how we subdivide the ocean when we want to deal with it at relatively large spatial scales. The large marine ecosystems divided up into 66 areas. We have ocean biomes and provinces. We have marine provinces and ecoregions, and that's starting with the ecological level. And then we have more in the management, geopolitical levels of arrangements. The Regional Seas Program. We have the FAO fishing areas and the regional fishery management organizations. And these tend to overlap and have different structures that are not necessarily always compatible, and these present a tremendous challenge in terms of governance and the fit of institutions to ecology and so forth. So there's a very ripe area here for ocean governance people to get involved, looking at how these provide coverage of the planet's oceans, as well as the individual arrangements within these sub-areas, and whether they're working or whether they are not. So, again, talking about entry points, I'm not going to go down to the national and local levels, but we can talk about entry points for our systems governance folks there. I'm going to zero in on one particular area where I think people could get involved, or as an example of where people could get involved. And I'm talking about the Global Environmental Facility International Waters Program, which covers transboundary lake systems, river systems, aquifers, large marine ecosystems, and open ocean. I know we're focusing on ocean, but I think what I'm going to say here applies across all of these systems. And there's encouraging developments here for those of us who are interested in governance. If you see the ellipse there, it covers 3 types of indicators that the International Waters Program used to think or up until recently has been thinking are the ones that you need to monitor progress in a transboundary water system. Governance processes, ecosystem stressors, and ecosystem state. And that was the suite of indicators that they were working with. More recently, they have been considering an expanded set of indicators which include the other boxes, which are at the top, architecture as a context for processes. So they're coming to the realization that looking closely at architecture as a context for process is an essential first step. And they're also looking more at a different or parallel pathway to the state and the stresses and the state of the ecosystem, to look at social justice issues, stakeholder engagement. Are the outcomes, although they may be good for the environment, are they socially just? And is the ultimate outcome being achieved, which is of human well-being, not just ecosystem, improved ecosystem or restored ecosystem. So the fact that they're moving in this direction, I think, is almost an invitation to governance people to get involved with what they're doing. And I think it's urgent. At their International Water Science Conference last October in Bangkok, there were about 250, 280 people there. And you could count, and I did a survey, the people who have a social science, political science, governance-oriented background on the fingers of both their hands in that arena. So I think there is definitely an opportunity there to get involved at that level. And I will stop at that point. I think that hopefully that has given us some food for thought and some points for discussion. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Thank you, Robin. Now, Lucia, as I say, kind of zooming in on a focused issue that will bring up a number of the same kinds of questions that Robin identified in a more synoptic way.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. At first blush, you might wonder just what a project specifically on marine piracy is doing in this session. However, if you look at the goal of this project, that is an interdisciplinary project at Dalhousie University, you'll see it actually almost verbatim overlaps with the introductory session documentation that Aaron and Robin prepared. And basically the goal of this project is to bridge the policy community interested in implementing innovative responses to increasingly urgent issues of ocean governance, such as piracy, with people from the science community prepared to engage in the co-production of knowledge. And so what we're doing at Dalhousie is looking at 6 contemporary outbreaks of marine piracy, which is represented in the stars on the diagram, and really trying to focus in on means, opportunity, and motive as a way of determining how we can research contemporary marine piracy to help the policy community address this problem. If you look at the responses to date, you'll see that they're all focused really on events or activities on the water. And these are important, but there have also been critiques about this. So if we look at what has been identified as some perceived causes of piracy, you see the disconnect, at least in the response